Oh, hi, it's me, Zack Peter, pop culture junkie, reality TV insider, published author, and host of the No Filter with Zack Peter podcast. Here I'll bring you all the latest news on the Real Housewives, deep dives into celebrity legal scandals, and unfiltered combos with your favorite stars. I've got you covered, and yes, I always keep receipts. So be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for all the latest tea. Now, let's dive in. Welcome on in, guys. Hello. Welcome on in. So as you know, we just wrapped our weekly Zack Pack Unpack, and we unpacked part 1 and 2 of the Harry and Meghan documentary series on Netflix. It was 6 parts. It was very long. I did a long recap on part 1, and then I did a long recap on part 2. And basically, it's garbage. Throw it in the garbage with the sprinkle cookies, right? So for those of you that are still interested in watching it, obviously, they're the longer recaps. They're about an hour each. They're available on the podcast, and they're available here on the YouTube channel. Hashtag No Filter with Zack Peter podcast, available on all podcast platforms. However, I figured I would just do a shorter, condensed version with the core reasons I disliked this documentary and why I think you should actually skip it, because it's not worth the full 6-hour binge. I guess the episodes were like 45 minutes to an hour. So very long. So I've outlined all of the reasons why I think you should skip it. The top 4 reasons, at least, all right? Reason number 1, as I just mentioned, is too damn long. It's a 6-part documentary, and I think 6 parts is it's way too much. I don't need to know, have they even been together for 6 years? I think they've barely been dating. And they've barely even been together for 6 years, and yet their entire love story, actually, it's a little unclear of what the documentary is actually about. However, it's spread out over 6 parts, and it could have easily been like a 90-minute special, right? Or at best, if we want to do the series and we want to cash in on that Netflix $100 million paycheck, then cool. 3 parts at best is all it needed to be. But there's a bunch of stuff. It's really just like a big PR fluff piece, right? We get a lot of sad stories about how awful it was for Harry growing up in the royal family. And, it's tough. And listen, I'm sure it is very challenging. I'm not even sure. It's absolutely challenging growing up in the royal family. It's challenging being part of the royal family. We don't need sad stories about how it was hard for him as a child. Obviously, his brother William, who grew up just a few years older than him, went through the same exact experience. Listen, I get it. Harry tries to make a point of but he was the party boy, so the press was a little harder on him because he liked to party. Well, I mean, listen, you're always going to be scrutinized when you're in the royal family, but this really did feel like a fluff piece. When we weren't trying to garner sympathy for Harry, we were definitely talking about how great Meghan is. She is Mother Teresa reincarnated, right? When it wasn't her friends that were gloating about what an awesome person she is, and it was just all her friends, soaking up all of her awesomeness. It's a Mean Girls reference. If it wasn't her friends gloating about her, we get all these montages of her as a child, and she was so smart, and she was so talented, and she was not your average girl, but she was very much the underdog story that we're trying to make her out to, blossom into the swan as she gets older. And she always got these straight A's, and she was very active in extracurricular activities. And then we get into her as an adult, and as an adult, we don't talk about Deal or No Deal, right? We completely disregard her first big break, which was Deal or No Deal. We also don't really touch much on Suits, but we talk so much about her philanthropy. So much. Oh my God, we're constantly seeing all of her charity work all throughout the 6 parts. Even when it doesn't even feel entirely relevant, we get lots of more random mixes of Meghan's charity work and what great work she does in the charity world, which is interesting because remember, we read Tom Bower's book Revenge, and it seemed like a lot of those charities didn't really, they weren't, they didn't think that she was all that virtuous, and it felt like it was a lot more self-serving more than it was genuine charity. But listen, I feel like that's how it's always going to be. Charity, there's always going to be, regardless of how great of a person you think you are, as somebody that comes with a background in charity, in the nonprofit world, there's always an element of self-serving, right? whether it's you're doing it because you feel obligated and it makes you feel better about yourself, whether you're doing it because you believe that you are the savior to help, whatever the charity is. Like there's always going to be a slice of, it being self-serving. So I like to take that with a grain of salt. But my God, do we really try to shove this down our throats? And it also kind of contradicts how much influence that she had as part of the royal family, because I feel like we make it seem like being a royal or being part of the family was just all terrible. But I'm like, but like this actually allowed you to bring more awareness to these charities and these causes and do more and have more influence and be more impactful as a royal. So just one of the pros that came with it. They weren't all cons, right? Reason number 2 are the Diana comparisons. Way, way, way too forced. They kept hammering this in every single episode. Every episode of all 6 parts, we were either being told about how much Meghan is like Diana, or we were being shown comparisons about how she and Diana are very similar. And some of them were a bit of a stretch, right? Like, oh, what a coincidence. Diana happened to announce her second pregnancy on Valentine's Day. And oh, look, we happened to also reveal our second pregnancy on Valentine's Day. What a coinky dink. I'm just like, really, like, we're trying a little too hard to hammer this in. If you have to constantly tell us how much you're like Diana, maybe you're not that much like her. I feel like there were a lot of differences between them too. Diana was much younger. She was in the royal family a lot longer. She divorced in the royal family. Like, there were just so many differences. Whereas Meghan came in older. She came in as an American actress. She came in already previously divorced. So like that already, not to say that she deserved it because she was divorced and older and an American actress, but it's just there were a lot of differences between Diana's background and her experience in the royal palace and Meghan's. Also claiming that, people don't like you because they're racist, even though you claim in the same documentary that you never really identified as being a woman of color prior to the UK pointing it out. Even her own agent in the documentary also reveals that he didn't know that she was even mixed initially. And then, once it became a topic of conversation, then, he then started pitching her for more mixed roles. And even then she wasn't mixed enough. And I don't know. It's a very strange narrative that we're crafting here. And I don't understand how, we're saying that the reason people didn't like you is because the UK is racist, yet we're comparing you to Diana and saying that you guys are so similar. So how is that just like Diana? Because Diana was also a woman of color who was marginalized because the UK is racist? Because that part confused me just a little bit. They're constantly doing these comparisons, though. And the part that's a little icky to me is they constantly use footage from Diana's BBC tell-all interview, which Prince William himself, or actually, this has just been reported. He hasn't actually spoken on this, but it's been reported that he's very upset about them using that interview footage because we know now Diana was manipulated into giving that interview, and she was very... she was cautious, or not cautious, but she was worried, and she was becoming like paranoid that people inside the White House were, or sorry, not inside the White House, inside the royal family were plotting against her. And it feels like we're doing a lot of these, like, this is what happened to Diana, so let's try to connect it to what's happening to us right now. So it feels just very manufactured. It feels like we're trying to it feels like a PR spin, like a publicist was like, okay, these are all the ways that we're going to try to make this narrative happen, right? But so I thought it was a little gross that they kept trying to justify it with things that she said in the BBC interview, because that interview she was manipulated into giving the interview. She was tricked into giving the interview. So I know for me, like, I wouldn't feel right if, that was an interview that my mother gave and she didn't necessarily do it willingly, and not that they did it under duress, but it just, they conned her and tricked her into believing that people were really plotting against her, and they used false evidence to do that, to get her to give this interview. And it's not, to me, not ethical, and I would not want to use that footage of my mother to try and craft this narrative, relating my mother to my partner. And the weird thing too is it's like Harry in the documentary also says that he doesn't remember much about his mother, that if anything, the only thing he really remembers is her laugh, but then continues throughout the series to talk about how much Meghan is like his mother. So, and how much she's being treated like his mother. So, again, a bit conflicting. Reason number 3, I didn't like the series because I feel like they omitted a lot of information. If you're going to give us a full 6-part series, then give us all of the tea, right? Like, don't drag out this one story and try to mix in all these other pieces that you're trying to use to support your narratives that just aren't adding up to me, right? They leave a lot of pieces out, right out the gate, actually. I was hooked by their love story. I was like, oh, it's cute and Meghan. And, they always say that it's when you're not looking that you happen to find it. Well, they failed to acknowledge that the reason she wasn't looking is because she was already in a relationship with somebody. They make it seem like she's having this hot girl summer moment and she's single and she wants to live life and she's not looking to mingle. And then all of a sudden she happens to meet Prince Harry, who she's never heard of before. But then we completely forget to address the part where she had a boyfriend at the time. She was dating and living with chef Corey Vitello. They were literally living together in Canada. And so listen, if that's your truth, then tell us, or if that's not your truth, then tell us your truth. Tell us what the truth is. What is the truth? If it wasn't that you guys were actually dating, then talk about that. Be like, okay, so we weren't actually dating, or we had just broken up, but we were still living together. I was still living with this hot chef boyfriend of mine. We just happened to still be in the same rental together. Get into that. Explain why you guys were still living together. Because if you were broken up, then fine. Then address it and let's talk through it, right? But omitting it and not addressing it makes me believe that maybe there is some truth to it, and you just don't want to address it because it doesn't meet the narrative, this love story that you're trying to craft and sell. So when we're right out the gate leaving out these really big key details, that to me makes me question a lot of the other things that come in throughout the documentary, right? Just give us something. Disregarding it makes me raise an eyebrow. And listen, that's not easy for me to do with the Botox in my forehead, but I raised a few eyebrows, okay? A few times. Or if you want to get more specific about, some of the things that they omitted, another great example. In their Oprah interview, Meghan talks about how she and Harry got married 3 days prior to the big ceremony, right? To the broadcast, which in the Oprah interview, she was like, oh, I didn't even, the big ceremony was very performative and she felt like it wasn't their wedding. So she was just happy that they got their own private ceremony and they really got married 3 days before that big ceremony, right? And that was the special. And, to her, this private ceremony was the real wedding because it was just her and Meghan and the minister, and how the big ceremony was just it wasn't her thing and it wasn't her choice, and it was very stressful. They completely leave that out of this documentary altogether. And the minister that apparently, performed the ceremony with them and married them privately 3 days prior, he's since come out and denied that ever happened. And he says, no, I did not marry them. I married them on the day of their big ceremony, which is what it says on their marriage certificate. That's when I actually married them. So clarify that for us, because if there's something that, you maybe misspoke on or missaid or maybe didn't fully understand, then address it. You're giving us 6 hours of your story. Address these inconsistencies. Address why the minister came out and denied that he ever married you when you clearly said to Oprah that you guys got married 3 days prior. And not only that, but she, like I said, she made it seem like Oprah, that whole big wedding ceremony, it wasn't really me. It was all performative, blah, 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 blah. And then the tune completely changes in this documentary, and she loved the big ceremony. She loved it, and she was so overwhelmed by the love and the support, and people were lined down the streets to watch them get married on her wedding day. So I'm like, what? Huh? The story about the ceremony has changed. First, we didn't like it when we were talking to Oprah, because it didn't feel like us, and now we're loving it, and it's our special day, and all I wanted to do was wake up and listen to we're going to the chapel, and we're gonna get married. And she had her little croissant and she had her mimosa and she was living her best life on her wedding morning. Which one is it? Which story are we sticking with and why has it changed? At least address why it's changed. If it's evolved in some way, I'm cool with that, but at least address why. Because when we leave things out, again, it makes me question things. Which brings me to point number 4, and that's that we constantly get these conflicting narratives all throughout the documentary. The people in the UK are racist and they don't like her, but yet the people in the UK love her and they're lining up for her wedding. The press is mean to her, but they also talk about how the press embraced her when she started dating Harry. Which is it? Do they not like you or do they like you? The royal family, she said when she met the queen for the first time that Camilla was like, oh my God, you did such a great job. Like they loved her when she first met them. And then all of a sudden she's like, no, they're leaking stories against me. And you know, that's not the case anymore. It's fine if the story changes and evolves in some way, but address the inconsistencies. Tell us why it changed. I don't need, you to give us a whole lecture on the UK and their history to the Caribbean and how that's what makes them racist and how we don't connect that to our actual experience. Or about how you're showing us all these headlines and you're trying to say that the British press was so mean to you, but yet you're using headlines that were from the US, negative headlines from the US, or how you're showing all of these nice headlines about Kate, and then next to you, you're showing all of these negative headlines about you, but yet you don't show the positive headlines about you or the negative headlines about Kate, because they do exist. Both exist. Kate was loved and hated. Meghan was loved and hated. But we're presenting the information in a way that's to meet this narrative that we're trying to sell. And to me, I'm just like, you caught me. They almost caught me a few different times where I was like, wow, yes. And they had me. And there were moments in the documentary that I thought were good. I think their family stuff is endearing when it's them and their 2 kids and baby Archie. I thought that was very endearing. I loved hearing about their love story, except when the love story wasn't, entirely the truth, and we forget that she was actually dating Chef Corey Vitello. So there are moments of the documentary that are actually good. It's very unclear, though, what the documentary is supposed to be about. There's no real clear direction. There's no real point as to why we're telling our story. If you wanted to tell your story, great. You did it when you sat down with Oprah. You wrote a book. Now you're doing a string of press interviews, sit-down press interviews, Harry. Why do this documentary? What was the point of this documentary? What was information that was new that we didn't get in your sit down with Oprah, that we're not going to get in your book? What is it, Spare? I don't understand. They also had for me, it's like, if you did the documentary for the paycheck, cool. I'm down with that, right? You need to earn a living. You need to get a paycheck. Own it. You wanted $100 million to sign a deal with Netflix and exploit being ex-members of the royal family. Cool. But the faux victimhood is what gets me. You can't sign a deal with Netflix and sign a deal with Spotify and sign a deal with Random House Publishing and, do press interviews and then talk about how, the scrutiny from the public is too much. You get too much criticism. Anybody that puts themselves out there in a public way is going to get criticism. They're going to get scrutiny. It's just part of the game. It's the nature of the beast. You're going to get love and you're going to get criticism. Love and hate. And it's always going to come when you put yourself out there. That's not to say that you deserve the hate, but that's also not to say you deserve the love either. You put yourself out there and hope that the people that are going to resonate with you and continue to, support you. And trust me, there are a lot of ruthless and toothless people that support them. My God, my critique, I posted a video because Meghan, there was a clip where she was talking about how you're not allowed to wear the same color as the Queen, and you're also not allowed to wear the same color as any other senior members of the royal family, and how, so that when she was part of the royal family, she really wanted to dress modestly and wear, beige and white and just colors that aren't very flashy because she didn't want to attract any attention to herself. And so I posted a series of photos, Diana included, of other members of the royal family wearing the exact same color as the Queen, of of Kate Middleton wearing the same colors as Camilla, who's technically a more senior member of the royal family. And then I posted a series of photos of Meghan wearing flashy bright colors while she was serving as part of the royal family, while she was a member, before they decided to exit. And the way people were twisting themselves into pretzels to like try and justify it and defend it. And I was like, listen, it was just one claim that she made, or well, the three claims. One, that she wanted to just blend in. Two, that you can't wear the same colors as the queen. And three, that you can't wear the same colors as any other senior members of the royal family. And everyone's like, how dare you try to come after her truth? And that's her truth. And here's the thing. Everybody's entitled to their truth, but they can't lie about the facts. Like, the facts are the facts. And if you're saying something that's factually inaccurate, yeah, we as the public, we're allowed to question that. Without that being criticism, we can question it because it doesn't make sense and it doesn't add up, right? So if you say something that doesn't make sense and I question that, that doesn't make me a Meghan hater, because I think she's a gorgeous woman. I think she has impeccable style. I think she lives a life of privilege and luxury, right? She has a hot prince husband. It's not to say that her world is perfect as a result of that, but like, she has a lot of things going for her. She's great. And I think that there's a lot that she can do with her charity work now that she has all of this influence after leaving the royal family. Being part of the royal family came with a lot of new influence. But it's just, if you're doing the documentary because you need to make a living, then just be honest with us about that and don't try to sell us this false narrative because you're trying to garner sympathy because you want people to support you here in the US because people turned on you in the UK once you turned on the people of the UK, right? You went after the press and you started calling them racist. You sued them. So it's like you can't put yourself into the line of fire and then, complain, oh my God, I'm getting hit, I'm getting burned. You threw yourself into the line of fire and you continue to throw yourself into the line of fire. They want us to believe that they aren't, these grifters that chose to not pay for their own security after they chose to leave the royal family. And then what? They became royal refugees that sought asylum in a Beverly Hills mansion with private security paid for by Tyler Perry, where now they feel safe from the paparazzi in Hollywood after signing multi-million-dollar deals to write books and host a podcast and film documentaries about their lives, specifically in relation to the royal family that they're so desperately wanting to get away from, all while complaining that the National Enquirer was mean to them? Like, to me, it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. I can easily do a 6-part documentary and talk about all the people that are mean to me online and then say, oh, it's clearly because they're homophobic and they don't like me for all of these reasons. But it's like we leave out so much context and we leave out so many additional details. This documentary series was a fluff piece. It was a PR piece. It's like the Casey Anthony documentary, right? That one was also terrible. We covered that as well. The Peacock documentary on Casey Anthony, where she was telling her truth and her version of what happened to her daughter. Also a garbage documentary. That's what these documentaries are now just becoming. They're becoming PR pieces. They're becoming fluff pieces to try and help people rehab their images. And to me, not cool. Because we're smarter than that and we can see through it, right? Listen, if it were a 90-minute special on their love story and we fell in love and then, we sailed off into the sunset and we decided we wanted to leave the royal family and now we're much happier in Hollywood, great. Do that. Say that. But don't sell us all these false narratives. Don't try to force this Diana comparison on us. Like, it's just, no. It's not working. It's not living, not thriving. Sorry. No. Pass. I would give it maybe, I was going to say 2.5 stars. Yeah, 2.5 out of 10 stars. I would give it 2.5 out of 10 stars because there were moments that were cute. The family stuff was endearing, but you can just also tell there was just an agenda and an objective, especially when you see it open up with their iPhone footage before they even started filming it, which to me tells me that they were always planning on selling this if they were already self-filming stuff at home to tell their side of the story, which really didn't tell us much other than, oh my God, I'm sad right now and I'm in the bathroom and I feel bad. Again, that's not here for it. I would say skip this one. If you want deeper recaps into the royals, into Meghan and Harry, and all of the inaccuracies in their story. We did book club with Tom Bower's book Revenge, covered it over the course of 5 weeks. So there are 5 different videos that dive into the alternative side of their story. And we also broke down in deep recaps part 1 of the docuseries, which were the first 3 episodes, and part 2 of the docuseries, which are the last 3 episodes, broken up into 3 different parts. So you can tune into that now on the YouTube channel. There's a whole playlist that's the Zack Pack Weekly Unpacks. So you can go and we'll unpack that. We unpack Tom Bower's book and we unpack the Harry and Meghan documentary on Netflix. I'm thinking of maybe doing some more royal stuff, maybe recapping The Crown. Maybe we'll make that like a members only thing where we watch The Crown season 5 as Diana is becoming more prominent on The Crown. And I'm also thinking maybe we read the Diana Chronicles next. Like maybe we start to dive deeper into Diana if we're interested in more royal stuff. If not, we can continue to play around with other topics. I always feel like it's fun. We did Housewives. We did Playboy. Now we're doing more royal coverage. So lots of good topics out there. We can continue to kind of swift and pivot through them. But at least for now, here you go. Those are my top 4 reasons. It's a bit dragged out, but like the documentary series, it was a bit dragged out. All right, guys, I love you. I appreciate you. You can always give me a follow at Just Plain Zack if you want to keep up with me personally, or you can keep up with the podcast and get all of the latest tea at No Filter with Zack on Instagram. Be sure to like and hit the subscribe button. That way you never miss the tea right when it's hot. All right, guys, love you. Appreciate you. Talk to you later.